Hello, I'm PJ Simon, Chief Chairman of Tanana Chiefs Conference. We serve 37 federally recognized tribes here in the interior of Alaska. I would like to formally invite you to the Intertribal Timber Council to our town of Fairbanks for your 2022 Symposium in May. Fairbanks has a warm, welcoming golden heart that can accommodate such an excellent group such as yours. I would like to introduce one of our longtime employees, Director of Forestry Programs, Will Putman, which many of you might know and recognize. Will can fill you in with more details and pertinent information to help you with your upcoming plans to Alaska. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at the symposium. Anabasi.
Hello, I'm Will Putman. I'm the Forestry Director here at Tanana Chiefs Conference, and we're here to give you a little summary of our program in our region and hopefully convince everybody to come up to our symposium that we'll be hosting here next year. But I guess one of the first things to get across about the Tanana Chiefs Conference is we serve a very large region. It's essentially all of interior Alaska, from the Alaska Range to the Brooks Range, from the Canadian border out to almost the west coast of Alaska. It's 202,000 square miles, about 30% of Alaska. If you were to compare it to some of the other states in the lower 48, it's about 75% the size of Texas. It's 25% larger than California. So we're talking a big piece of ground. As our Chief Chairman mentioned, we serve 37 communities within that region, and we're a tribal community. Those communities and those tribes are our members. You know, we're a tribally based organization. We're based here in Fairbanks, in the middle of interior Alaska, but the communities that we serve are scattered all over the region. Many of them are in remote locations that are accessible only by air or by boat or snow machine, not on the highway system. And that produces a very interesting situation in terms of applying our forestry services out to them, and it also provides a very interesting situation in terms of the identification of those tribes and the lifestyles that they've developed in their locations that they've always lived. So just a bit of a summary of our forestry program. There's many things about the situation that we have here in the management of our program that are quite different than forestry programs at tribes elsewhere in the United States. For starters, the tribes that we serve generally don't own or manage much of a land base themselves, and which is just because of the nature of how the land management and land status situation is in Alaska. But one of the core things that we do end up providing through our program is we provide forest management trust services to individual native allotment owners. So we're dealing with the owners of these native allotments. There's approximately 2,700 of these allotment parcels scattered around our region. There's probably upwards of 10,000 owners of those allotment parcels, and totaling about 250,000 acres, about 150,000 acres of which is forested. So again, the logistics of trying to apply our forest management service on these allotments is daunting. They're widely scattered. It's very interesting trying to get to them and to serve with some of the functions that we provide. But we'll do things like forest inventories and management plans, and timber sales, forest development projects, forest health projects, a whole variety of things. A lot of it's based on the request driven by the allotment owners themselves. And we're there to provide those services. We provide that through a self-governance compact that we have with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And that provides kind of the core of our forestry program. When it comes to native land ownership in Alaska, a huge role is played by the corporations, the profit-oriented corporations that were set up and established by the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act in 1971. So that a lot of the land base around the locations of these individual tribes is actually owned by a native village corporation. And there's also a regional corporation of which all the tribal members in the region are shareholders of. that has large land holdings scattered throughout the state. These are not typically eligible for some of the programs that we think of in Indian country in terms of forestry through the BIA because of their focus on the trust management, and these corporations are not trust lands per se, but they do comprise a very important land ownership in terms of importance to our tribal members that are in these villages that are also the shareholders of in these corporations. So there's a total of something like 17 million acres that are in our region, in interior Alaska, that are owned and managed by these native corporations. And so they comprise a very important land base for us to consider. And we provide and try to provide technical assistance to those corporations when they request it, when they need it, through whatever means we can. We generally have to find alternative funding sources for doing that through forest stewardship programs, NRCS program sources, and things like that. And we try to provide those technical assistance programs to those corporations whenever we can. In addition to the forestry and forest management-based services that we provide through the program, we also are involved in the wildland fire issues in our region, and starting off with the fuel reduction projects that everybody's familiar with at Indian country elsewhere. We've been working with our tribes and trying to provide for hazardous fuel reduction projects at numerous locations around our region. A lot of these take the form of WUI fuel reduction projects in the immediate vicinity of our tribal communities. And in some cases in recent years, we've gotten into also trying to provide fuel reduction on the individual native allotments. Up to this point, that funding's been almost solely provided by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, but we're going to have to see if we can expand that program in the future in order to try to serve our communities more effectively, and we'll be looking at trying to do that in any way we can. When it comes to suppression services and operations on wildland fires themselves, for about the last 10 years we have hired and maintained a fire crew that's based in Tok, Alaska, about 200 miles from Fairbanks on the road system, and it's currently certified as a Type 2 IA crew that we hire full-time through the season for 5 or 6 months, and they're made available for wildland fire operations through a cooperative agreement that we have with the state of Alaska. And it's been a very successful operation, in addition to kind of providing those fire suppression services that we feel that provides a valuable function as a workforce development engine to try to work with our tribal members in order to build their capacity in wildland fire and maybe set off on careers in wildland fire themselves. Through the management of that fire crew, we have sort of developed the capacity to be able to extend firefighter training. We started doing that with kind of self-training our own crew, and that extended itself into to setting up an agreement with the BLM Alaska Fire Service, which provides all the federally managed fire operations in our region. And we have an agreement with them where we conduct a lot of the pre-season training, refresher training and pack testing, and some CPR first aid training and some other training sessions that we apply to their emergency firefighter force that makes up the Type 2 crews that have always kind of historically been important in terms of managing fire resources here in Alaska. That EFF program of those Type 2 crews out in the villages has become quite difficult to maintain in recent years, and is producing a lot of change in the wildland fire community and how the whole operation is handled these days. BLM Alaska Fire Service is now moving into more of a contract crew model where they're backing off the hiring of these Type 2 crews themselves and are relying on contractors to provide those services. So one of the things we're trying to do with our firefighter training capacity is to be able to extend that training to the contractors in order to provide a vehicle for our tribal members to be able to get the skills to be able to be hired as employees on these contract crews. In addition, we're also attempting to try to engage as a Type 2 wildland fire crew contractor ourselves. for the staff that we have to administer all this, we have a small but very functional forestry staff. I have 2 foresters working for me and a wildfire management specialist to kind of oversee some of the fire operations, a crew coordinator and training coordinator, crew boss, all the seasonal firefighters, an admin assistant that helps out with all the clerical paperwork associated with the wildland fire side of the program. And so it's a great bunch of people to work with, and we feel like we've got a really good thing going. Lots of activity, lots of change. It's been a very, very dramatic time in recent years, you know, especially on the wildland fire side of the equation where there's so much change going on. So now's the time for me to take the opportunity to invite everybody to attend our symposium that we'll be hosting next year. We were originally slated to do this last year in 2020 before the pandemic hit last spring and blew the plans out of the water. So now we're moving down the road, and we're going to hope and plan for the preparation, the presentation of the symposium here in Fairbanks next May. I think the dates we'll be setting will be late May, maybe early June. And we're really looking forward to getting everybody here and being able to see everybody in person. I think that's one of the things we really miss. ITC is a great gathering of people in terms of, you know, just meeting up with everybody and seeing where everybody's coming from and what they're doing, and the little cultural differences between the tribes, and be able to see how everybody manages everything in their neck of the woods. It's a very interesting thing, and we're really excited about trying to do that and present that here in Interior Alaska. So I'm sure what I'm saying here will generate some questions about what is it they really do there at Tanana Chiefs in Alaska, and I would strongly suggest trying to attend our symposium next year, and we'll try to get into it in more detail. We'll try to enable you to gain a better understanding of forestry and fire management in the changing subarctic and the boreal forest that comprises the forest ecosystem that we live in here. And we'll hopefully put together a unique opportunity for 2-day workshops and sessions at one of our villages down the road, and be able to see some of the operations we have going on out there, and maybe hopefully experience some of the culture and practices of our native communities here in Interior Alaska. So we thank you, and we really look forward to seeing everybody here next spring.